All right. Well, welcome back to the Chris Fit podcast. We've got a different episode here today. We brought in a guest all the way from the far reaches of Australia. One of our most loyal fans gives feedback on the episodes and listens to every episode. So it's really awesome to have Damo in. Also, a lifetime long friend of mine. So I'll let Crystal do a fair bit of the talking as I know a bit of this story, and I'll just kind of tell along for the ride. But just before we do get into it, I wanted to share in terms of just how far away you are when you texted me a few weeks ago and said and asked for the link to our to our local church's online service, and I sent that to you. When I said that to you, it kind of occurred to me that you might possibly be in the furthest away capital city that we could possibly be from right here. So I looked it up, and there's this thing online you can go to, and it tells you. And yeah, you are in Perth is the furthest away capital city you could possibly get from the town of Carbondale, which we are situated. So I went and told my pastor that, and I said, your message has officially reached the other side of the earth. So I think that's cool that we're doing this.
It's
He was
incredible.
excited to hear it.
Yeah, it's kind of wild.
Okay, well, so I know a little bit about how you and Aaron reconnected over finding God and this Christian path together, but I'm wondering if you'd share a little bit about like where you're from, childhood, whatever you feel kind of called to share about your background.
Yes, no worries. So first of all, thanks for having me on. It's like Aaron was saying, we've been listening from the very first episode, my wife and I. So it's really nice. Um, so growing up, obviously I'm from Australia. We grew up in Melbourne, Victoria, a small place called Somerville, which back then it was just a pretty small country town. But it's no longer the case. Reasonably normal start to the childhood. I'm the oldest sibling. Got two brothers and a sister. And I suppose my story sort of started back in when I was I was taught by Aaron's mum. So I went to primary school with Aaron.
That's right.
And in grade 1, I was Aaron's mum Di was my teacher, which was incredible.
Aaron's mom was your teacher. How was that? Was she a sweet? Did you like that, having her as a teacher?
Well, knowing her outside of school, it was different because I'm friends with her son.
So you
but
guys
then
were
no
friends
one,
even before this, before first grade. You were friends.
yes, yeah,
Well,
I would have
you
thought,
would have been in my mum's grade in grade 2, and we're in grade 1 together.
yes, that's correct. Yeah, yeah.
So we've
So
known each other for so long.
Yeah, like since we were
yes,
6 or 7 years old.
Oh,
and having the same interests too. Like our friend group very much is based around sport to start off with. I suppose we're all active kids. Growing up, love football, basketball, cricket, and that's what sort of brought us together. And then from there, and that same group, friendship group, is still friends today. Just obviously all around different parts of the world and Australia, we still connect. That so the friendship's strong. And then like Aaron was saying, grade 1, I think we then obviously had together. So grade 2, I had Diane, and it was really good timing. Lots of things were really good timing at around that period of like our family's life. So like I was saying, I'm the oldest. I've got a younger brother who's 18 months younger than me, Matthew, and then at that time, we had another younger brother, Nathan. He was born in January of 1990, and then on his birthday in January 1991, he passed away. He died of SIDS. But it was
You know what it is? Yeah.
it was the first encounter, I think, that we had where we knew that God was there and part of our lives. and helping us as a family, but in really difficult situations. So at that, my brother and I, the one that's 18 months younger than me, we would get up at, I would say, between 5:30 and 6 a.m. every single morning. Back then, I think it was aggro that started on TV at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we'd be up for school at that time, watching the cartoons. And that particular day, so it was a school day on his birthday, and he passed away overnight. And mum, I think my dad was at work. He worked shift work at BHP, and mum dealt with what was going on overnight, which obviously was crazy.
Yeah.
And I believe my great grandmother might have been staying over at the time. She used to look after my younger brother while we were at school, and my mum was at work and my dad was at work. And so she was able to stay home with us while my mum went with the Ambo and my brother to hospital. But where the first odd thing that happened was that morning, we didn't wake up at 6 a.m. And it was both of us. So it allowed mum to and dad to call the rest of the family. We've got a huge family. They all came over for the support, and we slept until we were woken up at 8 a.m. in the morning by my mum and dad
Yeah.
to tell us what had happened that morning, which I can remember it like it was yesterday. And I think that was it made that tough, difficult situation easier, that we didn't, because my mum and dad, they didn't get home from the hospital until after 6 o'clock. And so if we had woken up at that time, my great grandmother would have had to have dealt with that on her own in the house. And then
So
around
everyone
that,
everyone was back by the time you guys woke up out of bed. They'd
well,
got back from the
they actually
hospital. Or...
they woke us up. Mum and dad came in, was about 8 o'clock, even after 8 o'clock on a school day. And then gave us the news in our bedroom, and we went out into the lounge room with a heap of family there and support straight away. And sometimes I think, God, you'll go through a lot, but it's usually God knows what you can deal with,
Yeah.
and gives you that, and helps you handle bad situations. And then after that, it's a story that my dad tells a lot. When it was a few days later and he hadn't eaten anything, and he's sitting at the table, and we had this fruit bowl, and he's looking at a banana, and he's like, I haven't eaten for days, and I would love that, but he didn't have the strength to go and grab the banana, and
Wow.
it jumped out of, it rolled out of the fruit bowl onto his lap, and he knew that was, you know, well, that was Nathan just helping. And we didn't have much money back then either. And the funeral was going to cost a bit. And my parents, they always went into Tass Lotto, and they won a prize to cover the funeral so that we weren't out of expenses for the week. We were always living week by week. And just a few of those things went in place. Just like I said, that God helped us as a family to deal with that.
Yeah. That's wild to hear, man, because I remember this happening. We were friends at the time, and I remember when it happened. I think you were in my mum's grade in grade 2, right? At the time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that was the other. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, that was the other thing that really helped. It was funny. In preparation for this interview in the podcast, I rang my mum and we went through a few things about with Nathan's death and that. And and she said it was one thing she brought up is having your mum as my teacher was incredible. She really was like a second mum to me, and helped me out at school and get back involved. So it's just timing, and then yeah, and then after that, after that had happened, we had I remember my great grandmother, she would always go to church. She went to a church in Dufton, I think, or Dandenong, and it was a Lutheran church. And the pastor there, he came over to our house, and he spoke to us, and then we actually went to the Lutheran church every Sunday for a few weeks, just to try and obviously help my mum and dad, and Matthew and I, deal with things. So it was the first time we'd ever gone to church. And it was nice, but I don't think I didn't really take much in, but it was planting the seed, definitely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When you guys were in all of this, was there talk about like, oh, this is God? Like, I just think about your mom and the gift that God gave her of those couple of hours of being able to process like what was happening in the moment without also having to navigate you and your brother's feelings about it. Or the banana, like at the time were you guys like, oh, this is God? Or is that more of a hindsight thing for you?
Um, in with the waking up, getting woken up, I always thought that was God. I always thought that was Nathan, helping my parents out and just being like, oh, mum and dad can't deal with you guys right now, and your great grandmother can't deal with you guys right now. You need to stay asleep. And with dad, I actually spoke to him about going to church when I went back on holidays last year, and because I wasn't too sure about his faith, whether he believed in God, and he then retold me that story, and he believed that was Nathan again, and
Yeah.
through God, and he believes in God, and has faith as well. He doesn't attend church, but I believe at the time he would have they would have thought that it has helped in that really difficult situation.
Yeah.
Which
It's
is
kind of beautiful to think about Nathan up there, like with God, right? Maybe sitting on his knee or whatever it is. And they're like, this is, let's work to help your family out. And I'm sure that was him saying, like, Dad, you need to eat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it it's funny, like as we go through the story, it's happened a few times, and then like it's taken so long for me to actually start going to church, and you sort of wonder why when these things have happened, and you're like, there's no other way of explaining how
yeah.
these things have actually happened other than that, and then yeah, so after Nathan passed, things eventually went back to normal, but we didn't. But back then, you didn't really probably get the help you needed. Nothing was diagnosed or anything like that. My like another part is like my dad grew up in a very sort of probably hostile um household growing up, and that can't help to be um go down a generation. It's never as bad, but it's sort of like it's it can be passed down through, like, you witness family violence, like all that sort of stuff. Like we grew up in a household that probably was at times pretty volatile, and not really having that knowledge that we have now about childhood trauma. By the time I hit teenage years, I was an angry man that, and I asked my wife, she's a teacher, and she often tells me, she's like, you would be classed as a trauma kid during high school.
Mm. Yeah,
And,
but we
you
didn't
know,
have that back when we were young, right? There was no like, oh, he's had trauma.
no, there was, there,
We
there was
just
definitely
called it
not.
like to fight. David just like to fight.
Yeah, yeah. And, I didn't know what was happening either. So
Mhm.
it was not even, wasn't just the case that I wasn't getting help from others. It was, I had no awareness of it. And, like, by the time, you know, like, I was, if I could describe, I was like a coil just getting wound tight and tight and tight, and through, you know, things at home, and things that I went through with the passing of my brother. My release probably was fighting, and like, which I'm, you know, you feel so bad now about that. Um, but at the time, I didn't know how to deal with anything. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. And yeah, so there was probably a good 4 to 5 years of just getting into fights, getting into trouble at school, um, which you can definitely relate to the childhood.
Well,
Um,
it's an interesting thing, right? Because so I grew up in probably a similar household to you, it sounds like, where, my dad grew up in a really volatile, dangerous house. And so he never learned the skills to cope with any kind of stress, which it sounds maybe like that's a similar situation to you. And yeah, like gets better each generation. But, if he didn't have anyone teaching him those skills, then therefore he wasn't able to teach you maybe what was going on for you. I don't know. It's just like it has to come out somehow, right?
exactly, and that, like, he they did both my parents, they did the best they could, given this
Absolutely.
situation. And then, like, I look back, like, now that I have kids, to lose a son on his first birthday, like, that is
Mm.
so traumatic. Um, I don't know. I honestly don't know how they even got through that. And then you have to, like, parent the other two kids, and then they end up having my younger sister, she's 10 years younger than me. And yeah, honestly, I don't know how they got through that. Um, yeah, pretty incredible.
Parents are incredible.
Yeah, well, you don't know your own strength, do you, as a parent? Like, you just, like, well, it is anyway. Like, you can cope through a lot of stressful situations and traumas, and get through it, which in the end, it does make you stronger. Um,
Mhm. And there's a truth to like that that God only gives us what He knows we can handle, and it's something like that doesn't make it fun and that doesn't make it easy, but He does know we can handle it.
yeah, yeah, I fully believe that. I do. And then, so then I met my wife, Ashti. We were pretty young. We've been together for quite some time. So I was 18. She's a few months, about 6 months younger than me. She was 17 at the time, and and we we then had our first daughter pretty young too. So in 2006, we had Michaela. And at around that time, I think was probably the second experience I had with an intervention that I believe God had something to do with it. Um, so not long after my daughter was born, we were living in Somerville with Ashti's sister, actually. And my mum, by this stage, my mum and dad had split up, and my sister was staying with my mum, which was around the corner from where we lived. And my mum she changed jobs. She was working afternoon shift, and we used to look after my sister, um, like, like from in the night time. So, like, my nan, she would come from Dandenong, which is like probably a half an hour drive. She'd come pick my sister up from school. She'd take her back to my mum's house, look after her till the like evening, and then drop her off to my house. And then somehow my mum would get her after that. And one night, my nan dropped off my sister to her house, and she knocked on the door, and I answered the door, and there's something about her and the way she was looking, she wasn't looking right, but I had this sense that I'm like, you have to come in and hold my daughter. And she refused. She's like, no, I just want to get home. I said, no, you have to come in and hold her. And once again, she refused. So I walked and grabbed my daughter. So my daughter would have been a couple of months old at this stage. And I made her hold her. I said, you have to hold her again. So she did. And I said, I said I loved her. And she then had to take off. She didn't look right. And the following day, my mum had a day off for some reason. I can't remember why. So my nan didn't have to drop my sister off, and I was just at home overnight time. I was sitting on the couch and I'm watching TV, and Ashley was next to me and her sister, and I stood up and I have to go to mum's house. And they've looked at me and I've just said, I've got to go to mum's house now. So I did. I drove around to mum's house, which was a minute away, and I knocked on the door, and mum was nervous. And I said, oh, what's wrong? And she said, oh, I haven't heard from my mum, so my nan. I haven't heard from her all day, and the phone's off the hook. And she said that her brother was on his way from after work to go to my nan's house to go see her, see if she's all right. So I said, oh, yeah, no worries. I'll come inside. So then the phone rang probably 5 minutes later, and I just knew what was happening. And sure enough, it was her brother. And she said that my dad had died. He found her just dead on the floor, like laying on the floor in the kitchen. And so she knocked off the telephone as she fell down. It turned out she had an aneurysm.
Oh, wow.
But it was then, like I said, like the help that God provides in tough situations. I was then there able to drive mum to my nan's house. I was there to help her, like comfort her straight away as soon as she found out the news, and just be a support. And I think after that, like we had the funeral, and I would talk about that what happened at that point a lot, but once again, after it was a clear sign, as clear as can be. I still didn't turn to my faith and turn to God for some reason. I don't know. I can't explain why. And then not long after that, Aaron came around. I think you were down from Darwin on holidays, and so this was like a next big moment in our lives. Aaron came to the house. I think it was you and I just drinking in front of the TV and talking, and Aaron's telling me how good Darwin is and we should head up there. And we were already thinking about moving away and trying something new. And Aaron, he sold Darwin on us. So I think it was about 3:00 in the morning. My wife's asleep. I went into the room. I woke her up, and I'm like, "We're moving to Darwin." And
my goodness.
she said,
Which is, go on.
Yeah, she said, I think she just wanted me out of the room because she was tired. Look, I think my daughter was like 5 months old, so sleep's still hard to come by. And she just
And you
wanted me
guys
to
are
get out
what,
of the room,
like
so she's like, yeah, no
22?
worries. And And I walked back out, told
Younger.
Aaron, we're going to Darwin. And I think within 2 weeks, I started driving with my dad to Darwin, and we moved up there.
Which for the American listeners, this is no this is no small thing. This is the literal opposite side of Australia, and Australia is as big as America. So the American people listening, you can imagine we were living in Miami, Florida, and then somebody said we're going to move to the top end of North Dakota. And that remote and also that random, like no one lives in Darwin. We'd never met anybody in our life that lived in Darwin to that point. Like no one until I moved up there with the army. Yeah. And we're just sitting around and Damon was like, we're drinking, watching footy and just chatting. And he's like, I've had a gut full of living in this small town that we grew up in. I was like, come up with me. And he just walks, marches in, wakes his wife up. We're going to Darwin. She's like, okay, when? He's like, tomorrow. Done.
Look, I had no accommodation up there. I think we stayed at a backpacker's place.
Yeah, right on
So my
the
dad
main
drove up
street.
with me, which was really good, which I can't believe he did now. Like, now that I'm older, he went for the drive. So it's 3,000 kilometers up the guts of Australia, and could get there, nothing booked, no accommodation. I've like just said to me, Dad, oh, we'll just stay in a backpackers for a couple of days. So he stayed there because he'd driven the last day. Then we drove we stayed in Alice Springs, which is in the middle of Australia. And then the last day he was doing a lot of the driving. And I think we got to about Catherine, which is about 300 and something kilometers south of Darwin, which is like, yeah, we'll just get there that night. And I got some beers or something, and he drove the rest. So it's like 1,500 kilometers. And he's cooked by the time we get to Darwin. So he stayed in the backpackers on his own. And I think you met us in Darwin on Mitchell Street, where like the main sort of like party area of Darwin.
Yeah, it's a
Nightclubs.
one street city.
Yeah. And then I think we went out that night, left the old man in the backpackers. And the next day he's just like, I can't leave you here and go home and catch a plane home with you not having any accommodation sorted, nothing. So he went around to some hotels, and then he found one that would let me stay for a couple of weeks on a reasonably good price too. And then he left from there, and my job was to sort out a rental before Ashley and my daughter flew over. And that started like our new life, which is crazy. And then, so we're in Darwin, and I was a landscape gardener in Melbourne, and the climate, like I was saying, the climate is completely different. Well, we were over there in
Tropics.
October. Yeah, it's 32 degrees, 100% humidity. It's crazy. So landscaping probably wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. So I was working, I think I got a job at Bunnings for a bit, and the Temping Bowling Centre, working as a mechanic at the back just to earn some money. Ashley was still at uni. I think she was working part-time at McDonald's. We had no money. It was an adventure that we were going to do for 6 months. And in the local paper was a like a whole page spread on joining the police force, Northern Territory Police Force. And the thing that I read, and I think Ashley read the same thing, is free housing, because we had no money.
And they always talked
so
up the NT cops to be like the best cops in the country. And they're like, I mean, I just remember the NT cops always being boosted as like the best around.
yeah, and it's like, because it's outback policing. Some of the places where I ended up policing, you're in the middle of nowhere. So you have to use what's around, which is not much. And it is. These days, it's turned as probably not a great police force to be in right now. But back when I applied, it was hard to get in. And they only took what was in that group of people. So they advertised maybe 30 jobs, 30 positions, 30 recruits. And I think they had like a few hundred applicants for those positions. And I applied. I was never very good at school. I didn't try too much either. And we did the, we had to do a few tests, but I didn't score well on the academic side. I could barely spell my name back then. And but when we came for the interviews, I think I interviewed well, and that's how I got the job. And like they liked the fact that we just had to go in, like my wife and I were just packed up and left with the 6-month-old baby, and had a bit of adventure in it. So I was lucky enough to get a position and free housing, which is fantastic, and started the recruit course, which ended up taking me a bit longer. It was meant to be 6 months, but I was in there for over a year because I dislocated my shoulder during the course and they back squatted me. And I think at one stage I was the only recruit in the Northern Territory over sort of the Christmas period. Which was fantastic. It's like a hierarchical system and you're the actual bottom and with no one.
You're the only one.
Yeah, there's no peers around. But it was fun. It was a good experience. At that time, Ashley was still going through uni. So it was good. Yeah, it was good for the family. Finished up. So that was 2000, a bit of a timeline. That was 2007. And then we moved I got posted down to Alice Springs and we went down there in about 2008, 2009.
And did you say
So for
Alice Springs was like in the middle of?
Yeah, that's dead center Australia.
So there's not much around there, right?
There is nothing around. It is, well, there is one main road and I think the population's about 30,000 people, but it is heavily populated with police officers because it is
because the rest of the population is Aboriginal.
pretty much, yep. Yeah, and services. A lot of government services, which they need. The issue in Alice Springs is, like, it's a beautiful place. We got married there. And if you just look at the scenery, like you got the McDonnell Ranges and like the weather's nice. It's 40 degrees a lot during the summer, but beautiful winter weather. But the issues with the Indigenous population is they've got a lot of communities around Alice Springs, but then they sort of all come into Alice Springs to live. And those Aboriginal communities, they're at war with each other. And then you've got a lot of drinking, of alcohol, which caused a lot of violence. And I remember like some shifts there, it felt like you would nearly be going with stabbing nearly every shift. And although like we were heavily, like in terms of like per population number of police officers, there was a lot. It didn't feel that way when you turned up to work and you had so many jobs on the screen and very little backup. I remember going to one job where it was a stabbing murder of a Caucasian guy coming from apartment. I think he got chased by a couple of Indigenous fellas and they stabbed him, killed him. And we turned up. We were two probationary constables and we got told by St. John's who were working on him that he's not going to make it. So it's a death, it's a murder. And we've called for backup and we got none. We got none until the next morning. It was just us with a street full of people. We're trying to get everyone's name, trying to do the best we could before detectives rocked up. It's just,
and then
it's
were
just,
you
the place
worried
is
for
so out
your
of control.
safety? Like, were you guys worried for your safety in that? Just being two police officers and all those people and two people who had just like stabbed someone?
Not really our safety. It was just trying to get because the offenders had ran off, but the friends of the person that had been stabbed, they'd all come from the pub. So I think there was some sort of incident at the pub, and so they're intoxicated as well. and they've just like the person that got stabbed, he was the fit one out of the friendship group, so he'd like caught up to him, and um, so that they sort of, I think they felt bad because they couldn't help him. I think they witnessed it from a distance, and they're like screaming at us, like, "Why are you chasing these two offenders?" But we're like, "We can't leave the scene."
Yeah, there's
Because
two
then
of
no
us.
one's there. And so it's better to get the evidence and catch them later. But try telling that to people that are they're
Yeah,
intoxicated, they're
highly emotional.
Upset.
highly emotional. And yeah, it's
Just on the timeline, you're in Darwin. How long were you in Darwin? Like
about 2
a year,
years.
2 years? Yeah. And
2
then, so
years,
this
yeah.
is your first posting outside of, so you do all your courses and all that. This is like your first posting
Yes, yeah, yeah.
down at, yeah, okay. And we're in the middle of Australia, middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere. Although it's like, now looking back after my next posting, that was
Yeah.
I was in the
It
city.
gets a little bit more remote. Yeah. You're in the
Yeah.
absolute first class
So
city. And
and it was good. It was a great atmosphere in Alice Springs, in the police force. So I don't know, like if you guys have dealt with something similar, but when places are so busy and so crazy, you're going through things together, you're experiencing it together, you're going through all the hard stuff, and you're too busy to be worried about other things. Like you're not talking behind each other's backs. There's no like, I don't think those places are better. You go to quiet places, you got too much time on your hands, and
Mm.
it's so.
yeah.
And I
Then you
think
get in
like
your
back
head.
then, yeah, and back then policing was really good. Like you didn't have body cameras, and I think the hierarchy up top was still police officers and not
Yeah.
as much politicians. So yeah, it was a really good experience, and then from there, I spent 2 years policing there. So 1 year in general duties, 1 year in like in the detectives area, doing property crime and youth crime and that. And we sort of wanted a change. By this stage, Ashti finished her degree as a teacher, and so Michaela, my daughter, she was about to start primary school, and we'd had our son. He was born in Alice Springs, so he was probably a year old.
Can we
And
just have a minute for your wife and how amazing that she was able to have a daughter and a son and move across the country
With no house,
with no
no
housing,
money.
trusting this plan, and then also got her university degree.
Well, and she's also, she's always been connected to Christ, right? She's the only
yes,
person I knew growing up.
yes, yeah, yeah. So I'm selling her short here too. Like her gift is her hard work, and her parents were the ones that instilled it in her and her sister as well. Her sister's just as hardworking. But they instilled hard work and like you said, like faith. They both grew up in a Christian household, where they were heavily involved in church. Um, so her upbringing was definitely different to mine.
Different to ours.
Different to ours, yes, definitely. And she was working full time. So in Darwin and in Alice Springs, she was working full time at um Macca's would have been nearly full time hours, but part time. But then when we got to Alice Springs, she was working full time at like a car rental place, Thrifty or something like that. And so she's full time uni, full time work. Plus, we had, you know,
Parenting.
a daughter that was, a couple of years old, and a son on the way. And then when she had our son, she was still working through it. So she's incredible and easygoing,
That's
as you
wild.
can see.
But I think it kind of goes back to something we talk about almost every episode now. It comes up like we used to look at Ashley and just think she was like a genius, but it's the work that no one sees that makes these people what they are. And it's so easy to be like, oh, this person's naturally good at this, or they're just naturally smart, but it's not. It's like, it's the work that nobody sees in the background that makes them, when they get the opportunity to.
It's it's easy to say that they're smart and that's why they're getting where they are over that hard work. And so which sort of brings on another so when we be given, she was grew up in a Christian household, and I didn't. Her faith is so strong. Like she'll say that she's stepped away for a bit, probably between sort of like late teenage years, which a lot of people do, and from there to up to when we had our daughter, and then it's sort of just gone in and out of it, had the strength, but she has had the faith. And so we got married in Alice Springs, and then we decided, right, we'll go bush. It was like the right time. Let's have a crack, and a good way to earn more money too, and save for a house. So I got a posting out at Borroloola, which, if Alice Springs was remote, this place is crazy remote. So you have Catherine, which is probably 300 and something kilometers south of Darwin, which is a pretty remote town, but that was a bigger town in the Northern Territory. And Borroloola was another 400 kilometers south of that, and then 300 kilometers over to the east. So you're at the Gulf of Carpentaria, and we were 700 kilometers from the closest town and back up. A community.
What's that in miles?
450
That's a lot. Okay, so you're far.
How
from the
many
nearest town.
miles?
Like
That's what I'm saying.
450.
Think about it. Yeah.
400. I
So
looked this up before we started. It's 434 miles from Catherine.
Not bad off the top of my head.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard to explain how remote we're talking. Like, this is as remote as anything. You weren't talking about a village of people that don't wear shoes. Like,
okay, like no Walmart.
No. We've got, although, so that it's funny how they do things in the Northern Territory and probably Australia, but that place, it's so small. So there's like a population of about 900 to 1,000 people.
Okay.
But they class that as a town, which causes its own problems. So we had a petrol station, a police station, healthcare, a little tiny supermarket, and then that was about it. And then within that area, they had 4 Aboriginal communities, all around the same area as well. So it's sort of like the same issues as what you have in Alice Springs is in that community. You've got the different families and groups. So there are tribes that have been fighting for so many years, all placed in the one area. And like I said, they class it as a town so that they can sell, and they've got a pub actually, so they can sell alcohol.
of course.
Which is crazy. Then they've wrapped the town. And we had a river running through the town as well. So because we're up north so high, we've got crocodiles and heaps of them too. So
yeah,
it
a
was
lot of crocs out there.
There are heaps of crocs, and so you got this like river going through, and which was great because we were flat out with work. So the station consisted of a sergeant and 3 constables, and we all lived at the compound. Like they had the station there, and you had the 4 houses behind it, all with huge wire fences, and it was very much we could lock ourselves in. And so we had, and I actually got a job at the local school. My daughter was going to the primary school, and my son was going to the childcare. And so that place, it was a great experience, great for the experience for the family, but it was crazy. We were, as a police officer, we were working 20, 30 hours a week overtime every week, getting called out numerous times a week on call. It was very stressful. But once again, like the actual camaraderie you have with others in that same stressful situation, it sort of brings you together, but it sort of brought us together drinking. So like when we weren't working, we were probably just drinking to try and not to try and cope with the stress. So
Well, that was going to be one of
while
my.
I'll go back a bit. So over the Christmas period, because Ashley was a school teacher, she had time off. So she took the kids and went back to Melbourne, I think, or maybe Alice Springs or Darwin. She was definitely out of Borroloola over the Christmas period to get away and have some holidays. So I was there on my own. And I so I said to the others that were working, I'll be on call over the Christmas period because I've got no family here, and the rest of them had their families there. So my Boxing Day night at about 11:30 at night, I had the on-call phone and I received a call from Darwin Police Communications to say that there was a death over in Vanderlyn Island. So it was, and it turned out to be a 9-year-old girl had hung herself. Um,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, crazy. And that there, so you can't. It's like it sounds crazy, but you can't take any emotion with that call. It's like you receive, and it's like you can't spend a second worrying about anything else other than how do we get out to the island? Who do I have to call to notify this? The chain of command up, call another couple of police officers out to help sort everything, the logistics of it, and which made it harder because we're in monsoon. We had monsoon weather, so it had been raining heaps. So, and we had to Vanderlyn Island was probably 80 kilometres north of where we were. So we were on the mainland Australia, and we had to drive to get to a boat ramp. We had to get the sea rangers, local sea rangers, to come and drive our boat, the police boat, to the island. But the access was hard because everything was flooded. The waters were running really fast in the river, and to get out to the island, so we couldn't go that night. We had to wait till daylight because it wasn't safe. So to describe the island, it was a small island where one family lived on the island.
Oh,
And which I'd never been there before. This call, I'd actually never heard of the actual island, but it was somehow in our policing jurisdiction. So overnight we got all the logistics sorted. We got everything ready, packed up the police boat, ready for first daylight. We drove out there. It was myself and another senior constable that came out. She'd been in Borroloola for a while. She's a really good police officer. We went out with the Sea Ranger, and we got to the island mid-morning that morning. So day after Boxing Day. So we'd been up the whole night. We arrived. The family met us, and where that 9-year-old girl had hung herself was in like the bush area. So they had the house. As soon as you land on the sand, the house was there, and then you had a heap of bush over to sort of the northern side. So we walked to the scene, which was a few hundred meters in the bush, pretty thick bush, and we get to the tree and the body, and my partner and I, we had to deal with that area and the body, and we had to carry her because the next part of that incident was obviously carry the body off onto the boat, but we were already organising the detectives from the next major station, which was Catherine. They had to drive those 700 kilometres or 400 whatever miles
yeah.
down to Borroloola before they could come out and process the scene. Because at that stage, we didn't know what it was. Like, she was found hanging, but the 9-year-old girl doing that, it's not.
It's
Yeah,
unlikely.
it's unlikely, or there's circumstances around that
Yeah.
is responsible for what she's
Yeah.
done. So we made the decision at the time. So there was no phone reception, or we weren't carrying a sat phone or anything. All I had was a drink bottle and no food. So we made the plan that my partner was going to go with the Sea Ranger and a body and their family and go back to Borroloola, and I was going to be crime scene guard at the tree. And although, like I said, like, it was bushland, there was a big tree, but the rest were like smaller vegetation, so no real like shade or anything. So it was lucky that one of the family members, as I was walking back to the tree to become the crime scene guard, he'd snapped branches on the way there, and he said, if you need to get back to the house, just follow the snap branches, which saved which helped me out a lot. So I was that all left. I was with the tree. I had one water bottle, which didn't last very long, thinking that they were going to come back in a couple of hours. Well, they didn't. I was guarding this tree for what seemed like probably 5-6 hours on my own, and I made the decision because I could see like it was going to be dark soon, and no one had came. So I made the decision to go to the house. I followed the broken branches, made my way to the house. On the way there, I got attacked by the camp dogs that were just left there. I got into their house, and lucky enough, they had a sat phone, and I used the sat phone to call up the station, and I asked, where are they? Have they found sand along the way, or, there's something happened, because they were meant to be coming. And my sergeant at the time, he told me, he said, oh, the detectives decided that they're not coming tonight or today to process the scene because they're tired from the drive. So we're just going to leave you there on your own.
At this house with no one?
At the tree.
Oh, not even at the house.
They had no way of contacting me. They weren't going to let me know that they weren't coming. It was just luck that I've gone to the tree, gone back to the house. So I said that I haven't drank anything. I haven't eaten anything. I was sunstroke as well. Like, I was in a world of hurt, plus dealing with the body, and like.
Mm-hmm. You've got time to process it and think about it.
But at the time, you're not even thinking that you've just seen what you've seen. Like, you're not, like, you've got so many other things going on that's just like at the back of my mind straight away. And
are there
he's like,
crocodiles?
if my Connie can't deal with a night out in the bush on his own, and we have to come pick you up and get a helicopter, you can pack your bags and go. Like, that was the advice I was given. So
this is on Boxing Day or Christmas Day or something.
This was the Boxing Day I got the call, Boxing Day night. This is the day after Boxing Day, and that was the night. So I've been working for like 2 days straight, no sleep. So I had no choice, but I had to stay there on my own overnight. So I didn't sleep again. So it was like another night. And then they finally came the next day at mid-morning. And my role then was just to help the detectives to process the scene. And I finally got back to work that night, back to Borroloola, where I finally knocked off work and got some sleep. And there was no
Are you worried about the wildlife at this point while you were out there? Are there crocs out there?
I stayed the
There's
night
definitely deadly snakes.
Yeah, that didn't even. I wasn't even processing that. I was not really thinking. By that stage, I hadn't slept. I haven't
stroked.
Eaten. Yeah, I was in a world of hurt. I did stay in the house that night, but And like my sergeant said, oh, you can eat their food. They've said that you can eat their food. I'm like, if you knew what the houses were like, you're not touching the food. You're not, you know.
You're trying to not touch the furniture at that
House on an
point.
island. Like,
Yeah, I'm sure it's not nice.
Yeah, it was terrible. Like, and so another thing happened that night. Like because I was carrying a gun, and I swear I saw ghosts. Like it was something happened, and I pulled my gun out, and like, um, but then I hadn't eaten or drank anything, so I was thinking, am I seeing things or what's going on? And I pulled my gun out a few times. Who's there? Who's there? Well, about a couple of weeks later, their family, that's the family of the deceased girl, came to the station and they said they wanted to see me to see if I was all right after everything that happened to them. And that they said that that night they were also worried about me because they got told that no one was coming to get me. And they said, oh, the house is haunted, by the way, as well. And I'm like, no way. Just, like, I swear I saw stuff. Anyway, so after that incident, there was no debrief, like, no one came for any sort of like help with your mental health or anything. Always just put us to the back of your mind, get on with it. And then probably a month after, I had another SIDS case. So it was a young baby that died in the same bed as their parents, and we,
Indigenous?
yeah, yeah, and we got called to that, and once again, you're like, you know, there's no other police out there or anything. You're dealing with that incident on yourself, and you've got to take the baby. You've got to check the baby all over to make sure there's no injuries and that. Take photo, like it's horrific, and you're dealing with the like so many things are going on. But once again, you're in such a busy place that you deal with that, and then it becomes paperwork, which is a terrible thing to say, but it's like, right, that you've dealt with that. It's now paperwork. You're on to the next job. It's survival mode. And so at around that point, we made the decision as a family, like, well, if we're ever going to move back to Victoria, it's going to be now. So either move to Darwin and just live life in Darwin and the Northern Territory, or move back to Victoria and we'll start again. And we decided to move back to Victoria. So I applied for the Victorian Police Force. I got in and transferred over. So we're talking probably 2012 now. And from there, I got posted into a country police station at a place called Morwell, around sort of Warragul, Morwell. So it's like Gippsland. It's a nicer area, like where we were living out of Warragul. And although I was dealing with, you're still going to deaths and just normal general duties policing, it wasn't as busy. It wasn't traumatic like it was in Northern Territory. But at that point, my life was definitely going down, like my mental health was going downhill, but it wasn't like, looking back, you could tap, like, if looking back now, I'm like, wow, the signs were there, but we would just, because it happened so incrementally small,
Yeah, you didn't notice the
steps.
change.
Yeah. So like I would go, like, they sound like big things, but I would go to the doctors and tell them that, oh, like, I broke my knuckle, which I punched a wall one time, and I split my knuckle. So it still looks like it's, not good, like it's in half. And I would say, oh, like, I've done this recently, and just to get pain medication, to take pain medication to like stop my nightmares and intrusive thoughts and that. But that was normal. Like, that somehow that become normal. And I wasn't sleeping, and I would take it was over the counter sleep medication. But in Victoria, you had to give your driver's license, so they had you down on the system, and you could only take one or two a day maximum, and should have only been for 7-day period. But I would take 3, 4 a day. So I couldn't go buy the next packet. So I would get my wife to buy a packet. Then I'd be working. So I'm in the police van and I'd say to my partner, look, I need some sleep medication. I've bought too many. My wife's bought too many. I need you to go buy some for me. So he would go in and show his driver's license and get it. And even after all those signs, like I would play football, but I wouldn't go back to the club of a night time or presentation days. I wouldn't go to the vote counts or
No
pick up
social
trophies or
side.
anything. So I would make excuses not to attend, and that become normal. And it was just like a running joke within the house. Oh, Damien will, make up an excuse not to go. And it wasn't until I played football one season in 2016, and I dislocated my shoulder again and had needed a shoulder reconstruction, which was not good for me at the time because I was going downhill, not realizing it, and given a lot of pain medication to deal with the
Dude.
pain. So once the pain got better, I wouldn't tell the doctors that the pain got better. I'd tell the doctors the pain was getting worse. And they wouldn't hesitate but to provide me with a script of whatever I wanted. I did go back to work reasonably quick after the reconstruction because I loved police and I loved my job. But at the time, I couldn't be on the van like general duties. I spent some time in prosecutions, like so the courthouse, and everything was going fantastic. So I thought until I was one morning. Part of the prosecution's job is when you're in court, you read out if someone pleads guilty, you read out a précis of what's happened, like you read out, all the whole incident. So it's a fair bit of reading. And first up in the morning, the courthouse it's a bit crazy in the morning because you've got all the accused people sitting behind you, waiting to attend court for their day. And it's always a bit frosty at court in the mornings. So first up in the morning, I'm reading out a précis of what's happened. It's a couple of pages long. And I get to the first line and everything went blurry. I had a full panic attack in court. I was sweating. I didn't know what was going on. From standing up reading, I just sat down, and I was lucky enough that there was a prosecutor next to me that he'd also had a panic attack prior to that. So he was sort of aware he'd gone through PTSD. He understood what I was going through really quick, so it was really good. So he just grabbed the paperwork, stood up, read out what happened, and as soon as he finished and that that case had finished, he turned over to me and said, "Go back to the station now, and go to see the sergeant and tell him what happened." So I did. I walked into the office, and I think I just broke down crying in the sergeant's office, and I didn't know what was going on. They sent me home, and I lived with 40 minutes from the police station at that time. And the whole 40 minutes, I think I was just crying the whole way home, not knowing why I was crying. I couldn't help but to cry. I went to the doctor, the GP, and I told them what happened. And that was the first time I'd heard PTSD. And they prescribed me some Valium, antidepressant drugs, and a doctor's certificate. And from that moment, life just changed completely. Like it was waiting. It was just like I was going downhill, and then I stepped off the cliff at that point. And the next probably 2 years was a big blur. We because once you get in the system and it's a workplace injury, you've got to then deal with, I'm not too sure what they do in America, but you're dealing with the work cover because it's a workplace injury, and you're dealing with insurance companies. And so you've got to go for independent medical examinations from psychiatrists. So I'm trying to navigate what's going on with my life. And so's Ashty, and then by then, my kids are starting to get a little bit older. And I went to the first psychiatrist, the independent medical examination, and I just told him what had happened, and I get the report sent to me because part of the system is his report will go to the insurance company, and you get the report as part of like the privacy. And I'm reading that, and it's saying that I've got severe PTSD, major depression disorder. I shouldn't drive a car. I'll never work again. And I lost it. I overdosed on Valium, I think, that day. Like I just
Deliberately.
I spiraled. I didn't know what was going on. I think that was the first time I ended up in a psych ward. That night, I think one of my sergeants from the local police station who, once again, like God puts people in your life that helps you. And he certainly helped myself, but more my wife as well, because we had that, being in the country spot, you have that relationship outside of work as well. So, being able to just call him up instead of calling 000, or 911, call him up and just say like, yeah, Damien's overdose and, help me. So, and like we had really good neighbors too. So a few times when episodes were happening, my wife would just take our two kids to the neighbor's house while the ambulance will come to our house or the police will come to our house. And yeah, so that was the first time I think that I went into a psych ward that night and into the hospital and then to the psych ward. But I also knew the system. So part of the policing role was like you deal with a lot of mental health. And I don't know what they do in America, but here they use section them under the Mental Health Act. So like if they're either trying to commit suicide, talks of self-harm, you'll take them under the Mental Health Act, you'll take them to the emergency hospital, and then they'll get assessed, and then they'll either keep them in, they might take them as a voluntary patient or involuntary patients, probably more the case, into the psych ward. And then as a police officer, you will then hand them off into the care of the psych ward, but you're seeing all that. So I knew what to say to try and get out as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, it's, so after that incident, it was, the other problem I had was I couldn't work. So I'm still employed by Victoria Police, but I'm too sick to go to work there. So I've got time on my hands as well. And I think over the next probably 18 months, 2 years, I'd spent, I've spent 4 weeks once in a psych ward at the Austin Hospital. A few times I was taken under the Mental Health Act by the local police, or the one time I went to see my brother who was in a different area, and I hadn't seen him for quite some time. We had a bit of a falling out of the family.
He's battling his own demons too, right?
Yes, yeah. And I showed up to his house unawares to him, and he didn't even know I was off with PTSD. And I'd been really bad leading up to that. And Ashty put up with so much, and she was on edge. And she gets a call from my brother. It's like, I haven't seen, like, she's like, Damien's just turned up to my house. I haven't seen him for ages, and he's acting strange. And she's like, straight away, jump, call the police, call the police. So he did. And And my junior partner from back when I was working at the country station, on my initial station, I worked with her and I taught her a few things. Well, she turned up and so she was shocked as well because she'd moved down to the area, didn't know what was going on. And then I told her, I'm like, oh, I'm fine. You know, just seeing my brother, I haven't caught up with him for years and, you know, trying to mend stuff. And she's like, this doesn't sound right. So she rang my wife and Ashley's like, you've got to section him. He's like probably saying goodbye to his brother and like, which I can understand completely how she got to that. And yeah, it was a roller coaster for the whole family, I think, for a couple of years. At one time, you came across, didn't you, for a football game? How'd that
Yeah.
happen?
Ashley kind of reached out to us, a group of us, and said, I think you guys need to come down here and talk to this guy. He's spiraling. He's tried to take his life a few times. We've tried the system. We've tried the nice way. I think you guys need to come down here and kind of talk some real truth to him, and a little bit maybe of a harsher message, I think. I think she'd reach out to Rick, and then Rick would reach out to the rest of us, and he said, get your asses out here. I came back from the States. I was living in the States at the time. Had been planning to come over anyway, so I came over and we came down, and I don't remember exactly everything around it and how it went down, but I do remember being there and taking you. I think we went and watched a football game, and then we had a pretty long chat that night. Might have gone into the early hours of the morning. And kind of, I guess we took a different approach. We wanted to come from the idea as like, dude, you have the most amazing family here. This isn't fair on them. And I was dealing with my own demons around the same sort of stuff around that same time. So it was really, never spoke about it at the time, but going there to talk to you was a massive help on my own life that I had never really mentioned to anyone until right now. Dealing with similar stuff, loss of identity, purpose, it was all gone. Too much time to sit around and think. Similar sort of circumstances.
Yeah, with your army, it's in a way similar to the policing, like a job like that, where it's more than a job. It can become very quickly your identity, and you sort of live it. You live it not just within your workplace, but you come home and people want to ask stories, ask, you know, like what happened, and like, coming from Porolula and Alice Springs and everything, I had a lot of stories. So you'd be the life of the party sometimes with some of the stuff you're able to like talk about. And when that's taken away and you don't have your faith to turn back on, like your identity is tied up so much within your work or your body, your fitness or whatever. And like looking back now, like I think I wonder how it would be so much different if I had faith to fall back on, and had my identity tied up into the right thing, which is in Christ, instead of my job and all that. I know, like one sort of turning point during the whole craziness of the 2 years. I don't know if you remember when the ball tampering happened with the Australian cricket team. So that was near, I can't remember what year that was, but that was around Easter, 1 year. And I'd tried a lot of times, like I'd tempted to hang myself and a few other things. And like you said with the family, like I knew I had a beautiful family, but when you're down, and you're not well, you start thinking that you're doing this for your family, like by sort of
Yeah.
ending it, it's you're giving relief to your family, and like, you know, like, you start tricking yourself. And I think it's the devil. Like, it's the
Yeah.
devil
It's the
tricks you
enemy.
to think that your wife's going to be better off. You know, she'll find someone eventually, and she'll be good. And your kids, you know, like, because of my PTSD, they couldn't bring anyone to our house. Like, they actually still struggle to bring people to our house now. But it was real bad then. Like, they saw a lot of, like, we tried to hide a lot, but, you know, you can't help it. If your dad's crying in a ball, shaking, having a really bad panic attack, and you're getting taken to the next door's neighbour's house, and then you see the ambulance come, and like, it affects you. And then I'm thinking, oh, well, I'm getting told by the devil. It's like, if
Mhm.
you just end it, you're doing everyone a favor. Like, your parents, you're doing them a favor. They don't have to stress about you anymore. And that really starts coming in. And like, you know, people that do commit suicide, I I know some people will say, like, that's a selfish thing to do. I I tend to think that probably a lot of them are tricked into believing that they're actually doing the selfless
Yeah.
thing.
I think nearly all of them. I mean, when I've battled those same battles, it's the same thing. It's like
Mm,
I tend to think like I'm better. I'm more valuable dead than I'm alive.
yep, yep. I'm doing everyone a favor. And so around that time, so the ball tampering, so it got to the stage where I'd I'd organised to to end my life over Easter that year, and the kids were getting looked after by my dad. So he'd come and pick them up from their house, and like, at that point, I didn't have any emotions. I didn't have positive emotions. I didn't have negative emotions. I was emotional. So there is a name for it, emotional, whatever. But
Are you taking a bunch of drugs too for this at this point?
so this point, I was just prescribed crazy drugs. Like, I was on
Yeah.
desamphetamine during the day. I was on 3 Valium, I think, every night. Um, and I was on Valium for years. Um, Antipsychotic, antidepressant. So you just, you literally, a day in your
It's
life,
hard to feel anything in that point.
oh, um, yeah, yeah, I was feeling nothing. And I remember, like, leading up to that. So Ashty had that weekend, so the kids were getting organised to spend the weekend with my dad. Ashty had a half marathon or something where she had to travel for the day with one of her girlfriends. So I had the day on my own. And in the lead up, I'd written a letter, which I've still got now, to my kids and Ashby, and to my parents. And like, 'cause I had a lot of help. Like, I was very lucky. A lot of people were helping. I just didn't take any of the help. Um, so I wrote him a letter, and like, I still remember, like, when my dad came to pick the kids up, because obviously they didn't know what was going through my head. My dad didn't know. Like, he was like, oh, you know, he was happy because he was taking the kids away for the weekend and getting to spend time with his grandkids. And I'm thinking in the back of my head, like, I'm never going to see him again. Like, I'm about to do this horrendous thing. So yes, you give him a hug, and like, you kiss goodbye. And then by that stage, Ashty had gone through heaps.
Hmm.
Like, she stayed because she was faithful to God. Um, Her faith to God was the reason why she stayed. To the family unit, um, was so important. But she knew that weekend, like, she said to herself, like, because we've obviously spoken since a bit about it, but she said to herself, like, I can't do any more. If he's going to do it, he's going to do it, and I'll deal with whatever's going to come after that. So we didn't talk. We weren't talking much anyway because I had no emotion. I would just stare into space half the time. I wasn't there. So the ball tampering happened. And as a result of that, so it's a Australian cricket team. They were playing a test match. It was nothing. They hit the ball. They did something
Low
so the
level
ball would
cheating that happens in every game.
exactly, exactly. And our media and people in Australia just absolutely like crucified them. Like they went hard at them. And how this resonated was I'm going through all this stuff. Like I'm going to end my life. I'm never going to see my kids again. I'm never going to see my wife again. And I'm like, you're putting these players who have done not much wrong. They're not bad people under all this depression and, they crushed them. They when they came
Yeah, it
back
was
to
horrible.
Australia, I think Bancroft might have been the first to
Yeah.
interview, and he cried during his interview. And then maybe I think Warner was next, and then he cried during the interview. I'm like, you're making these players like they're just sport players, but they haven't committed a crime, cry and like just in a world of hurt for nothing. And
Well, and then
and I've got
Steve
to
Smith.
Steve Smith, yeah. So we're sitting on the couch, and I remember this vividly. We're sitting on the couch and we're watching this interview, and he's talking, and then he started crying when he got asked about his dad or about family. And I'm like, that was the first time I felt something. Like I just felt, it's like it woke me up. Like God just tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Watch this. Do you know
Mm.
what you're doing to your family? Like it's not about you. It's it's about your family." And I want to say, I don't think I cried. I didn't cry then, but I just reached over to Ashley, who was next to me, and gave her a hug, which that for at that point, like that was something that we didn't do. I wouldn't show emotion, or affection, sorry, would be the word. Um, and I gave her a hug, and I don't recall if we said much, but it was just that, it was that in my head was like, I'm giving this one last go, and
Mm.
and we'll see if it works. Um, things from that point didn't. So she went away that weekend, and I planned from then just to try everything I could in this one last go. It wasn't just like I'll give it a week and we'll see like things turn around. It's like, what am I going to do to try and get better? I've got to put stuff in place. So at the time, I was working with a really good psychologist, um, who she did help me a lot, and and it was more like keep me alive for a week. I'd see her once a week. It's keep me alive, keep me alive. But I started probably taking things she was saying and trying to adopt them to get better. And then I, from that point, I was sort of like I just grabbed a bunch of darts, threw them at the dartboard, and picked up everything I could to try and get better. Like so, yoga, mindfulness, like what else? Just self hypnosis, anything I could to try and just get like have the morning that was good because I didn't have any good times during the day. So I'd worked on like if I can have a good start to the day and get to maybe 9 a.m. That's a bonus. That's a positive. And I'll work on the
That's a
next
win.
day. That's a win. So I think a lot of it was probably just the mornings, just have a little win each day, and it started working. I did the Wim Hof course as well.
Yep.
That was quite good.
I think
Um,
we were talking, I think you shared it with me. That's how I started getting into it for a while.
yeah, yeah, it was good because it it put you back in control of your body. He's big on that, like, yeah, and I think there was a book called The Wedge, I think by Scott Carney, or
Yeah.
that was good as well. Like, just if you can get that 5 seconds or whatever it is, that gap, and try
Between.
and take control. Yeah. But and then I was also introduced to podcasts, so I would like try and learn as much as I could about the your nervous systems, like your autonomic nervous system, and then your parasympathetic, your sympathetic. Like, if I could learn as much as I could about PTSD, my body, maybe I could try and help my situation, or try and at least be able to fix it when I'm in a real bad stage, that I don't end up in hospital again. And my job at that stage, because I was still unable to work, um, was to get better. I spent 8 hours a day listening to podcasts, and researching stuff, and little by little, I'd show signs of improvement. Um, a lot of times, like, and if I'm talking to someone now that's going through bad things, it's, you go 2 steps forward, and then you're like 1 step back, and then 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that's how it usually goes. But you've got to see that you're still going that 1 step forward. Like,
Mhm.
you're still getting better. It's just nothing's ever fast. Nothing's ever like smooth. It's super rocky. And that still went on for a bit of time. Um, we and because part of the system is like, and so my psychologist, she said a really good thing one time, which I took on board. Was when you're off with like PTSD, and when it's part of like your work cover stuff, it's just you're dealing with the PTSD side of things, but you also become the system. So you're not, there's no incentive to get better when
Right.
you're off work, and like, if you get better, you're not getting paid. Like, you sort of like, you're not well enough to work at another job, but you're like, um, you're sort of stuck in this hole of like, right, if I'm to get the pension, I've got to be sick enough. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I remember you battling with that conundrum for a while, and you were, from the outside looking in, you're in a much better place. But I remember talking to you about it, and you're like, if I get a job, I feel okay to get a job, which would give me something. But if I get a job, then I lose the pension. So they were forcing your hand to basically, because you could go get a job and get paid a couple of $100 a week because that's all you would have been able to work, or you could not work, get a full pension, which is enough to kind of survive off at least, or at least somewhat. And yeah, I remember it being quite the conundrum for you. So like you were stuck in the system.
yeah. And like, if you go out, because here, as part of the work cover, like, you'll get, at some point, you'll have sort of surveillance being done on you. And they'll sit off your house, and like, you know, one of the hard parts about PTSD is you can't see it. Like, with
Hmm.
any of the mental health issues, like anxiety or depression, there's no physical injury. So, and I've always kept fit. And at that time, I was extremely fit. I It was unhealthy fit. I was 63, 64, maybe I got to 65 kilos, but still bench pressing over 120 kilos. Like, I had no
That's
fat on me. I was doing heaps of running, because I was doing it to kill myself. I was trying to kill myself exercising. Um, but so from the outside, I was
mm,
extremely healthy. And yet people are like, well, they'd ask you, what do you do for work? Because, usually the first question you get from someone, when you meet them on the street, it's like, oh, how you going? Oh, what do you do for work? And because you're in that system, like you don't have the answer to that question either. Your identity's so much tied. Your identity's tied into what you're doing, but you can't do it. And so we were stuck in that as a family, because everything that happens to me happens to the family as well. We were stuck in that in the system for probably up to 3 years. And it's because it's a long process of like, you're on work cover, then I was given the temporary pension through the insurance company. So I could have got the permanent pension straight away. So you do your 2 years on the work cover, and then you go to see another independent medical examiner. You got 2 of those as part of your insurance, and they put down on the paperwork that I had severe PTSD and the prognosis wasn't good. Yet they gave me like a temporary pension for 1 year, and then to reassess it after 1 year. And then if I'm still no good, it's permanent. So like that news was gut wrenching for the family, because then it meant I'm another year off work. I can't work for a year. I can't
Yeah.
really, if I improve, then I don't get the permanent pension, but I'm not well enough to sustain in full-time employment. Yeah.
Just in purgatory.
Yep. Yeah. It was tough. But like all part of the plan. Like I fully believe that. I had a lot of pride. I had a lot of like, um, I had to be brought to my knees, uh, um, and and then the only way you can look is up when you're that low. There's no other way to look but up. I'm just a slow learner, so it took still some more time. So I eventually did get the permanent pension, and that was in 2019. And as a result of that, we were like, we wanted to move again. We'll see for Melbourne's weather, but also like a bit of a fresh start. Like I said, I'd been sort of, we were living in a country town, and I'd been taken away by the ambulance in that town a few times, by the local police, and my football team, which had been super supportive and fantastic and got me through some hard times. It was, I didn't want to be known as the guy with PTSD and not well. So we decided to move to Perth, which is once again a huge trip.
Just
So the
far as
trip to
the other
Darwin
one.
was bad. The
That's
trip
like
to
here, and then
Perth,
that's over here.
yeah, it's about the same distance, just over
Different direction.
west. So we moved over here. We're currently living in Perth. In 2000 towards the end of 2019, and from here, so Ashty, so by that stage, like she's an incredible person. So she's after, like I only covered a tiny little part of my PTSD and what she was dealing with. Like it was way worse than that. She was still full-time teaching. She then did some leadership stuff. She took over like the head of her department, and then she was she was working for about a year, acting deputy principal of the high school. So she's a high school teacher of the local high school, all while dealing with just chaos at home. When we got over here, it was for a change. It was her job that we moved over here for, which was really good because we started to really focus on her, Horth, and me, which we needed to do as a family as well. And so she got a head of department job at a high school over here, and which allowed us to move over here. She had employment, I had the pension, so I had time to find some part-time work. And it's been really good. But since we moved over to 2019, like I said, I still, after all these things, didn't come to faith in Christianity yet. Like, I'd been through all those experiences. By this stage, I actually viewed Christianity and I viewed God as, I believed in God, but I couldn't bring myself to go to church because of what happened with Nathan, my brother. It's like I was like, how could this happen? Like, I was really still angry and about that, and like what my parents had to deal with, what we had to deal with. So Ashley was going to church. She was planted in a church, Global Heart here. It's a bigger church because she'd take her kids to, and so she found that church that was the best one for our kids to go. And I was always happy for our kids to go to church on Sunday because I thought it was a great idea. But and then, so she was planted there. She started serving. So she was serving once a fortnight in the cafe and really build a community within that church. But it wasn't until I was about to turn 40. So that was a couple of years ago. I'm 42 now. That I
Easter 2
started
years ago, I
asking,
guess.
pardon?
Easter 2 years ago, because you're right there on Easter.
Yes, correct. So at around that time, things weren't actually, they were improving. Like, my PTSD starting to stabilize. I've still got, ongoing, like, I can't cope with stress like I used to. Like, it's really, like when we started this, I had a panic attack. It really does, it has affected my ability to cope with anything that's sort of above the normal sort of stress levels. My body reacts really quick, and then hopefully I can just overcome it. But it's stabilized, and life was moving pretty normal since we sort of moved here. But I just started thinking, why? How are we here? Like, there's got to be more to all this story. We can't just be, like, so different to all animals. We can't, like, what sort of other species are on so many antidepressants and, like, like, it's, like, just sort of asking the big questions. And I don't know if it was just time that, like, God's like, right, you've got to start asking these questions now, or it was because I was coming up to a milestone of nearly 40 years old that you sort of, like, take stock of, like, what's happening in life.